So let's fast forward to about 2016, 2017. I read an article, a medical article about how nanotechnology was in the future going to be used to inject into cancer patients. And the nanotechnology was so smart, it was going to attack cancer cells only and leave all healthy cells alone and then be ejected from the body. And I thought that was genius. That was amazing. I've never heard of such a thing. And then my writer's mind said, well, what if the nanotechnology inside of a person was sentient and could communicate with the host? And I said, what if the host could actually control that nanotechnology and maybe even summon it forth from its skin to become liquid metal like shapes and tools and weapons? And that was the idea for Metcraft, Mechcraft. That became my biggest screenplay that did really well in contests. I created a story of a teen boy who was the very first ever born with this nanotechnology in his system. Everyone else before him in these organizations had been injected with it through a scientific experiment, but his parents both were part of that experiment and they had a child and he was born with it. And that made all the various warring factions want him because they feel he would be a wild card. He would possess powers that nobody else had. It's kind of it was part coming of age, it was part Matrix, it was part Harry Potter. Anyway, it did well in contests and it got me meetings, Sony, Warner Brothers, a couple of agents, and across the board, they all said the same thing. We love it, but it's too expensive to risk on an unknown IP. It was an intellectual property that nobody ever heard of. So no one was willing to buy it or take me on as a client. And I got the same answer probably a dozen times from all the meetings. And it was exhausting. And I was frustrated because I felt this was the one, this was the story. But a friend of mine who is pretty high up in the industry came to me and said, Brian, I have an idea for you. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I spent years researching and writing the first draft and writing the second draft, entered in contests, revving it up, so many revisions. And then he says, convert it to a novel. I was like, oh, I had just spent so much time on this thing. I did not want to. Last thing I want to do is just take a 115 page script and convert it to a 300 plus page novel. I was, after I cried into my scotch, banged my head against the wall a few days, I had to come to the conclusion that he was absolutely correct. The only way to get the attention of the people that I needed to get the attention from was to build a fan base, somehow try and build a fan base. And the only way I could do that was to convert it to a novel. Now, at that time, I had no idea about that world, none whatsoever. I had no idea how I was going to publish it, how I was going to market it. I didn't know anything. But I grabbed a Word doc and I Googled what's the format for publishing online and set it up and went to work. Many days of sobbing and crying and frustration. But eventually I started to, as you guys can all probably attest to, started to love the process. The idea that I could suddenly get into these characters' heads and reveal what they're thinking about instead of, because the screenplay, you can only show what an audience can see. You can't ever talk about what they're thinking or what's going on in some other scene. And now all of a sudden I was just free, or just completely free and unleashed to do what I wanted. And I got into a lot of trouble with these characters. I had them do and think terrible things and wonderful things. But the process ended up being just such a joy that I fell in love with writing novels. And I didn't think I would. I thought I would just absolutely hate it. And I ended up loving it. So then it was time to publish. And I thought, okay, I'm going to self-publish, or am I going to go traditional? Well, I submitted to the traditional Big Five. You can imagine how that went. They're like, who? Brian Fitzpatrick, who? They didn't even respond. So then I said, okay, well, let me look into self-publishing. And I really was excited by the idea of being in complete control of everything. So I admire anybody who self-publishes. I have such mad respect, because I couldn't do it. My soul-crushing day career kept me very busy. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to manage this. So I said, I need somewhere in the middle. I need like an indie publisher. And I ended up finding one that and a small indie publisher who took on the book. They published it, and it went really well. It went well. They didn't do any marketing because the indie publishers just don't do it. So I had to do all the marketing myself. And this is 2017, and I was really a trial by fire of learning how to market. All I had with me was social media and a very tiny budget for in-person events or business cards, posters, those banners you lift up and all that kind of stuff. And I would try and do in-person events. And I really learned through that step what works well for me. It doesn't work the same for everybody, but what doesn't work well. Your Facebook ads, they were great. Amazon ads, very steep learning curve. But if you can do it, you can have wild success on it. Twitter ads, terrible. I didn't get any traction at all from Twitter ads. In-person events, always the best. Because now you're in front of people and you can talk about the story. You can ask them what they're reading, what you can just sort of connect with people. And I love to connect with people. So I found in-person events were great, but they were also few and far between to come by. It wasn't just every weekend. So Metcraft 1 started to peter out, was still doing okay. Wasn't really gaining the traction I wanted it to gain. And I said, well, this really needs the sequels. I always had this in mind as a trilogy. So let me start outlining the sequels. And then the pandemic hit. And my corporate job sent me home to work, sent all of us home to work. And I thought, this is the best thing ever. Working from home was the best thing ever. I had my setup, I had my computer, I had my thing, and at the end of the day, instead of commuting home, closed my laptop, put that laptop away, opened up my real laptop, and started typing. And my wife is super supportive. She, cleared a path for me, like, schedules and stuff, and said, just write, get your writing done. And so as I was finishing the Metcraft sequel, I said, it's time for a new publisher. My contract with this original publisher was up, and I was free to pursue. And so I'm like, okay, finding an indie publisher is not an easy thing to do. But I found a source, and you guys maybe have heard of this and maybe not, but I highly recommend this free source. It's called querytracker.com. Querytracker.com. And it's a free database that lets you house all your cover letters and resumes. And it has hundreds and thousands of publishers, agents, lit managers, and they're all there, and they all agree to the format of Querytracker. So when you submit one, you can submit to several, and it's fantastic. And it has this whole chart that lets you, keep track of what you submitted, who you submitted to, and if there's been a follow up. And it's incredible. And so I submitted to 8 publishers and 8 agents just to, wet my feet, see what this thing's all about. I got 4 rejections from agents. I got 3 rejections from publishers, and the 4th publisher, Black Rose Writing is their name. They said, hey, not only do we want to publish your Metcraft sequel, but we want to republish your original. And I was like, well, sign me up. That's how often does that happen? It almost never happens. So I signed with them on a 2-year contract. I think standard contracts are 2 years now with these publishers. And I told them I had the 3rd one I wanted to write, but I hadn't touched it yet. And said, that's fine. I signed them in August of 2020, and they said, okay, May 4th, 2021 will be your publication date. I thought, May 4th, Star Wars, May the 4th be with you. I thought, this is perfect. So I was going to kind of tie that all into my marketing, and it was just a win-win. And then later that year, a rock band out of nowhere shows up and messages me and says, hey, we read your book, Metcraft, and we loved it. Can we write a song about your story? I was like, how many books get songs about them? Unless you're Lord of the Rings, then you have a lot of songs. But I said, well, yes, absolutely, you can write a song. And they're kind of what they call industrial rock, which is a lot of heavy metal crunching, a lot of heavy keyboard synthesizing. It was just the band is called Chemical Straitjacket. Right. I mean, but love the name, and they did it the wording in such a way that they dropped all the vowels. So it's CHMCL, and then the rest. And they were so nice, and they were just so cool. I said, you know what? Great, sign me up. I'll do it. I'd love it. And they created this song, and they specifically made it about the villain in my story. Her name is Sasha, and she is just relentless and ruthless and diabolical, and everybody loves the villain more than anybody else. Go figure. The hero, forget him. They love the villain. So the song is called Tendril and Blade, and that's a direct reference to how the weaponry works in that path. But it's out. They released it in 2021 as the opener of their album. So I was floored, and they played at shows, and they play it on online, and it got in like the first month, it got 10,000 views. Sure, it's called Tendril and Blade. And it's pretty, intense, aggressive song, and it sort of fits the tone of the story. So I thought these guys really captured the essence of the story, and plus it has an amazing bass line. So I'm all for that. So anyway, I was very humbled and honored by that. But that's just another way that you can market. You never know what kind of marketing opportunities are going to come your way if you just get out there and pursue. And I think the result that came from was because I had put myself out so much on social media. I am involved in Facebook groups, Twitter communities, Twitter writing community, LinkedIn even, now TikTok. I even do TikToks. I swore I'd never do TikToks, but I'm doing TikToks. Not any dances, I promise you. I don't do dances, but there's a whole entire community of authors on TikTok that just do videos of them talking about their books or about writing in general. And I highly recommend getting a TikTok account and just do a search for authors, or search for author talk, TOK, and you'll come up with this wealth of thousands of authors, our age, my age, older, younger. TikTok is not just for young kids anymore. I was so blown away by the opportunities there. So I highly recommend, if you are not on social media, if you're not getting yourself out there on social media, take the plunge, dive into social media a little bit, get your feet wet by joining some Facebook groups. There's some fabulous Facebook groups that are incredibly supportive of authors of all genres, all ages. Anything that you write, there's an audience for you and a support group for you. I've been completely shocked by what I've seen. There's even a Facebook group called TikTok for Authors, and it's all coaching on how to do the best or most interesting TikToks to support your books. It's all synergistic. So I highly recommend that. But we all know it takes guts. It takes guts to get yourself out there, to put yourself out there. You make yourself vulnerable. We all know that. We all have done it. If you're trying to get published, or if you're trying to do a meet and greet, or if you're at a book signing, or standing in front of an audience, you are putting yourself out there and running the risk of being vulnerable. And it takes brave. You have to be brave and courageous. And I applaud anybody who takes the time to do it. It's not easy, and it can be fun, but it's never easy right off the bat. Now, a lot of people ask me what I find the differences are between screenwriting and writing my prose. And I'm speaking to a group who has done a lot of books, and I think there's some screenwriters in this audience too. Show of hands, who writes screenplays? Okay, wow. Okay. And a show of hands, who has published novels? See, almost everybody has done something. Short stories, novels, novellas, articles. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir, I assume, but with screenwriting, you only get to write what an audience can see. You cannot deviate. And nowadays, the industry has changed so much that they don't even want you to use any flowery language on your action descriptions. They want so-and-so does this. They don't want, they do it like, in such a cool way. You have some really cool description. They don't want that anymore. They really want a stripped down, as few words as possible. And that's something that's happened in the last 2 years. They really just want the meat and potatoes, and they'll let the director figure it out from there, I guess. So as a screenwriter, I am dead set against that. I don't like the idea of making my screenplay so uninteresting that the reader is going to get bored reading it, but that's what they want. So I found a way to be as precise, like a surgeon with my words. And it makes it even tougher, but it makes it worth it because you come up with this very lean screenplay. Whereas writing our stories, as we all know, you are just free. You're just free running in the field, right? Whatever you want, go off on any tangent you want. You could be Stephen King and go on like 5 tangents before you get back to the main story. It's the best of both worlds. You can do whatever you want, get what they're thinking. And what do I like best? That's tough to say. That's tough to say. I love the discipline of screenwriting. It forces me to be economical. It forces me to be thrifty with my words and my dialogue. It forces me to be better. But novels, I can just really just be yourself. You can say what you want. You can get to the point of what you want. And it's just a wonderful experience. So I will probably be bouncing back and forth between them for the rest of my life. I really enjoy both. And my publisher has actually came to me and said, we want more books. You got more Metcraft lined up? And I said, not right now, and I told him I really didn't plan on doing any more. And then about a day later, I had outlined 3 more books. So, writers, we can't stop ourselves. So going back to the song comes out, and then that 2021, May 4th, the 2 books come out. But a few months before that, in January of 2021, the publisher announced to all their roster, says, hey, we've got an open slot in November 2021 for a book. If you guys have something written, you can submit it to us. And if we choose it, your book will be published in November 2021. Well, that's unheard of. That's about half the time that it normally takes them to publish something. So I wrote back and I said, well, Mr. CEO, I have the outline for Metcraft 3. I haven't written a word yet. And he goes, well, if you can get it to me by March 1st, we'll publish it. And this is end of January. I was like, oh. And what did I do? I said, yes. So I'm like, I go to my wife and I say, honey, so how do you feel about not doing anything for 6 weeks? And she was completely on board. I had vacation time from my soul crushing corporate job. I racked up all that. I had like 3 weeks of vacation time and maybe a little sick time, and nights and weekends. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And there were some weekends I didn't sleep. I would get maybe a couple hours sleep and then get right back up with a bucket of coffee and keep writing and keep writing and keep writing. And I have an editor that I use. And I told her, hey, I'm coming to the end of this. Can you make this a priority for me? And she said, of course. So thankfully, I finished it in about 3 weeks. I finished the longest book I'd written. It was about 10,000 pages longer than the other 2 books. And I sent it to her. I said, I'm sorry, this is longer. Can you just, do what you can do? I have a March 1st deadline. She wonderful. I love her to death. She put everything aside and grabbed Metcraft 3 and edited it, gave me great pointers, she's amazing. She has a way of elevating my voice without diminishing my voice. She'll offer suggestions, but long story short, she got it back to me. I had enough time to do one more rewrite and get it to the publisher, and I got it there at 11:50 p.m. the night before the deadline. And this massive feat. I was exhausted, and I came to them and I said, I did it. And I said, okay, thank you. I was like, oh, okay. But they published it November 1st. So November 4th, 2021. So I had all 3 novels published in the same year with them. And that was just complete luck. Just a fortuitous opportunity that I foolishly said yes to. I don't think I would ever put myself through that again. Took days to sleep that off, but it was worth it because the book came out. This is actually the 3rd book here, and it's not super thick, but my stories move really fast, so it reads pretty fast. Side note: my son is a digital artist graduate, and he does all the book covers for me. So if you see all 3 covers, go online, go on Amazon. The book covers, I give him an idea what I want, and he comes up with these incredible designs. Like, oh, good, saving me money and get to show off my talented son. So that was the publishing aspect of things. So the books came out. And I was like, okay, well, this indie publisher is actually pretty established, and they actually have some marketing they do for authors, which is unheard of in the indie world. No indie publisher I've encountered does any kind of marketing for their authors. They don't have the budget, but these guys have a little budget. So they did an Amazon campaign for me, and they have the expertise because I'm terrible at Amazon ads. I don't know what to write. I don't know what hashtags or what subject matter to do. It's just I'm all thumbs. And they have pros. So I said, do it. And but all three books hit #1 at different times, maybe 3 or 4 times each, by them doing sales or just a big campaign push. They were able to get to the #1 slot where you got that little orange bestseller tag on your books. They were able to do that. And, as an author, you need to capitalize on that, take a screenshot. So then in the future, when it's not #1, you can say, no, it was #1. So they've been great. This publisher has been nothing but amazing. And I'm very happy they accepted me and found me, and they haven't let me use my own editor. They have in-house editors, but I said I have one that I've been using all along. And they said, go ahead. And in fact, they loved her so much they signed her up as one of their editors. So, and then when it came to audiobooks, they don't really get into it, so they let their authors navigate their own path with audiobooks. So I had the first Metcraft book, I had put it on ACX. That's Audible's own sort of meet and greet where authors meet with narrators, and the narrators audition for the authors. It's fantastic and free. I like the word free. I like that a lot. So the first book was done, and I was so thrilled with the audio on that. This is back in 2018. And I had an award-winning narrator do it, and she took me on as a royalty share. Instead of paying her up front, she was willing to do a royalty split because she wanted more sci-fi books in her roster. She only did like a lot of dramas and romance, and her sci-fi was a little light. So she said, I'll do this as a royalty share for you. Great. She killed it. She was amazing. Then I came to her for book 2. I said, hey, Megan, you want to do book 2? And she goes, I would love to. Now I need X number of thousands of dollars up front because I don't do royalty share anymore. She's blown up. She's really sought after now. And I was like, well, I'm very happy for you, but very sad for me because I didn't have $3,000 to send her way. If I had it, I would have used it because she was so good. So funny way of fate, in book 1 of Metcraft and the screenplay of Metcraft, the opening scene is at the Roxy in Hollywood, and there's a band on stage in the story named the Potential Lunatics. They're an actual punk band, a real life punk band that I am family friends with. I know their parents, and so my wife and I would always go to their shows. And these little teenage brother and sister duo, brothers on drums, sisters on guitar, and does all the singing. And it's very punk rock. It's very angsty and loud and crunchy, and I love it. They're just talented as hell. So that was in book 1 of Metcraft, and they actually played at a gig at my book launch for Metcraft. So I've been in touch with them all this time. So book 2 comes out, and I put it out to social media. Hey, I'm looking for a narrator. And who contacts me but Emma, the girl from the Potential Lunatics. She says, I would like to audition for you. And I said, all right. So she read a few pages, and she sounded amazing as a narrator with storytelling, and because she's done acting too. I said, come on in, let's do this. So by some weird circle of fate, she came back into the picture as the narrator, and publisher loves her, and they're actually adding her to their roster of narrators as well. So that is coming out, hopefully, knock wood, in the next 2 weeks or so. The narration for the audio for book 2. So my point of bringing all this up is pivoting. Be open to any opportunity. Opportunities come out of nowhere. They come out of thin air. I would say in today's world, for me at least, 100% of my opportunities have come from social media. Whether that be an event I hear about and I go to, or if I am engaging with people on LinkedIn or Facebook, every opportunity that has come my way has been 100% social media. And so if you're not on there, I highly recommend getting involved in some way. but now that I've talked about the three books, let's pivot over to world building. How many science fiction writers? I see you. I see you. So world building, everyone has their method of world building. You know, you're creating something from scratch, a world, whether it's known, like in Metcraft, it's Los Angeles, modern times, but there's a whole underworld that is involved. Or if you're creating life on another planet, there's a process, and I think everyone has their way of doing things. I took a master class, the website masterclass.com. They have some great videos, and world building. I watched one author, I forget her name, but she had this great format that she uses, and it was way more extensive than what I've used. But for me, I'm starting with, I'm taking a look at the planet, whether it's Earth or some other planet, and I'm thinking, okay, what's the environment? Where's my story set? Desert, swamp, icy, ocean, underwater, where am I going to be? And then I like to go, well, who are the inhabitants? Are they human? What's the animal life? You know, I kind of focus on that. And then I kind of go right into societal structures. You know, are we, you know, what level of technology are we? Where are we in society? What hierarchy is there? What kind of government is there? Are they authoritarian? Are they democratic? What are we doing here? Then I go into religion. Are we talking multi-gods, no gods? What kind of faith base do they have? Are they cultish? You know, I love a good cult. There's nothing, I love writing about cults. And then I start talking about the struggles. What are the struggles this world has? Not necessarily my characters, but the world. What are they dealing with? Environmental crises, authoritarianism, war. What's going on that I need to worry about? And then the good stuff. If it's sci-fi, I'm like, okay, what cool technology, what unique technologies are going to be? If it's fantasy, it's going to be magic. What is the magic like? Because, you know, fantasy, you got to have some magic. And then lastly, for my characters, what's the thing? And that's where I kind of get to the root of the story. For characters, for me at least with sci-fi, I tend to make the stakes external. They have an internal arc, but I'd like to make the stakes external because I grew up watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and there's always some sort of external factor. And I really get a kick out of end of the journey. There's an actual change that we can see, feel, taste, touch, and a lot of times internal is fantastic, but I like to see something external too, like Luke Skywalker rising up, you know, becoming the Jedi Master, something like that. And so for me, that's how I incorporate a lot of world building into my world. Metcraft is modern day Los Angeles, so I didn't have to do a lot there, but it's a secret society beneath the underbelly of LA. There's factions that all have this Metcraft ability, the ability to summon forth the liquid metal and make it into weapons. And they all have this agreement on how best to use that weapon. Some want to use it to openly help the world. You know, here we are, we're superheroes, we're gonna help you. Others want to help from the background, you know, keep it low key because people will just freak out if they see the superpowered people walking around. And others have come to the conclusion that Metcraft is just pure evil and must be destroyed. And so their entire goal is to destroy all other Metcrafters and then destroy themselves. They're basically a death cult. And these three factions are at war with each other secretly, and they've kind of reached a stalemate, and they have sort of an uneasy truce because everyone knows the rules. Everyone has the same level of power, the same abilities, so they can never make any progress. And then along comes our hero, Jake, whose nanotechnology as Metcraft activates with his teenage hormones. It activates the cells. And all of a sudden he is the wild card. He's the first ever born with it and have it be activated. And so everyone thinks, oh, this guy's gonna be a game changer. And he ends up being a massive game changer. I won't give it away, but he does things that freak everybody out and make everybody want to control him and use him for their own ends. So that's the first book. So that was my world building. It was not nearly as extensive as it needed. You know, I'd have to create a whole planet. but I did need to create this whole subculture in Los Angeles. And eventually by book 3, it goes global and it becomes a huge, you know, Independence Day, the movie like Independence Day, that level of event. So now, but pivot again. Once your masterpiece, your book, your script is finished, then what? You know, then what do you do? I mean, like I said before, publishers really aren't going to help you that much. So it's up to us to really get out there. Now, I covered marketing a lot. I want to talk about networking, and a lot of people hate that word, that it feels disingenuous or feels transactional, like I'm networking with you to get something from you. But I've come to look at it a little differently. I look at networking as I'm genuinely trying to build a relationship. I want these people to be my friends. I want to call them and I want to call them and talk about writing and talk about marketing. And I want them to call me and tell me their wins, tell me what they've accomplished or a contest thing they have. I find with that approach, it's a lot easier to connect with people. If I go to an event and I'm talking to 50 people, I'm literally trying to make 50 friends. I want to have an ongoing relationship with these people. And with that approach, it's been very successful. When I first was in this, 2017, 2018, I didn't understand that. And I would come in going, okay, what are they going to ask me for? What do they want from me? What do I want from them? And that's terrible way to approach it. But if I go in, if I'm connecting with people, it's because I want to hear from them again. And whether we do some business together, great. If not, we can at least celebrate each other's wins or, you know, mourn each other's losses, you know, whatever it happens to be. I ended up joining, last month, I joined a new Hollywood industry social club. And they had a mixer at a bar in LA. And I said, oh, this is my first post-COVID live event. You know, what's it going to be like? Is there people going to mask up, or what's going to happen? So I had just gotten over COVID, so I'm feeling pretty invulnerable. And went there, and it was amazing. There were producers, and there were finance people, and there were directors, and there were writers, and it was just this room full of people all kind of wanting the same thing, wanting to get out and be interactive with people again. It had been so long. And ended up making some decent friends that I've kept in touch with, and we check in with each other now. And it hasn't led to, you know, a deal of any kind, because that's the side part. That's the icing on the cake. Really, it's the meat and potatoes is the connection. I ended up connecting with a NBC Universal executive who is not on the creative side. He's on like the recruiting corporate side, but he's a writer himself. So he and I have been swapping scripts. And I've been really learning about his comedy. He has dark, edgy comedy, and reading his scripts has sort of planted seeds in my head about how I could emulate that or do my own version of a darker comedy, edgy thing, because the stuff is fantastic. And he's read Metcraft, the screenplay, and my sci-fi horror screenplay, The Dark Below, and he's given me actionable notes, real notes that are very useful to me. So it ended up being this mutually beneficial relationship. So don't be afraid to network. I get a lot of questions about what to write. A lot of writers come to me and say, well, you know, you're trying to make it in this industry. You're trying to get ahead. You're building your brand. That's the catchphrase now, is building your brand. A lot of writers like to write a lot of different styles of things. I have friends who write comedy, thrillers, spy, action. They just do it all. And then I have other writer friends who are laser focused on purely horror or purely rom-coms. And I go by I listen to what the industry is saying. And across the board, agents and literary managers and even some executives will tell writers, in the beginning, when you're trying to make it, focus on one or maybe two genres at most. If you're a sci-fi guy, like me, be sci-fi. Become well-known as the science fiction go-to. Be the horror go-to. If they think I need a rom-com, be the guy or the girl that they think of for rom-coms. And then once you've established yourself and you've got some credits and you've got an income, then start to branch out, then start to say, okay, well, I'm going to try this other thing now. And if you have an agent, if you have representation, they'll be more likely to say, okay, I'll support that, because they really control, getting you work. So my recommendation, if anybody is going into this business, is to focus on one or two genres, stick to what you know, become the best at what you know, and then start to branch out. Like I'm sci-fi horror all day long, but I want to write a rom-com. I really do. I really want to write a rom-com, and I plan to maybe in a few years. Not yet. I highly recommend going that route. Contests. How many people have entered contests for their books or screenplays? Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of engaging. Like, oh, what's going to happen? It's a whole suspense thing. And I used to enter a lot of them, and I found that it was great to get the accolades. Oh, you placed, or you got semifinals, or dare I say I haven't won any, but I've got semis and quarterfinals, which is great. I like it. And it's led to some meetings, but it never really led to tangible success. So what I decided to do is trim it down to where I'm only going for like the 3 or 4 big, well-known contests that can actually a win or a semifinal will get you ahead. I sort of let go of a lot of the smaller contests that weren't very helpful. For screenplays, you want the Nicol Fellowship, NICHOLL, which is affiliated with the Academy Awards, Page International, Final Draft Big Break, and Austin Film Festival. Those, for whatever reason, those are the ones that everyone gravitates to when they're looking for new material to buy or new writers. Absolutely. The first one is Nicol Fellowship. Oh, sure. The Nicol Fellowship, NICHOLL Fellowship. And they're associated with the Academy Awards. The next one is Page, just PAGE, International. And then the screenwriting software company, Final Draft, they have a competition called Big Break. And that one's really pretty new. I mean, it's about 10 years old, but it's considered new. And they've really come a long way. They have a lot of clout. Yes, all these are screenplays. All these have been screenplays. There are some novel ones. I'll mention some of those too. And then the last one is the Austin Film Festival. They have a screenwriting contest. Those 4, generally, if you place semis or higher, they will generally get you meetings with agents, executives, and potential sales. For novels, I recommend one called Screencraft. Even though it's screenplays, they have a novel writing contest, as well as another one called Script Pipeline. They have a book contest as well. And those two generally are highly rated, highly recommended, and they will get an author in front of an agent. Screencraft. Yeah. Screencraft. One word. Do they have to be screenplays? No, these are for novels. Yeah, Screencraft runs 4 or 5 contests of different types. They have a TV pilot contest. They've got a novel contest. Book Pipeline or Script Pipeline has published novels contest and unpublished novels. So if your novel's not even published yet, they have a contest that one of the prizes is publication and meetings. So I highly recommend those. You can find all of them in one place called Coverfly. Cover, like COVER, fly.com. I highly recommend them. It's a free place to house your script or your book, store it up there, and it lets you submit to all of the contests you can imagine in one place. And it doesn't cost anything except whatever the contest costs. But to keep your script or your book there costs nothing. And I've enjoyed their service because it's just my stuff's there. And anytime I want to enter a contest, I just go to Coverfly and go to submissions, and there's all the contests you can think of. Exactly. And have your novel or your script saved as a PDF file. Yeah, they don't want the Word doc, or they don't want the final draft version. They want the PDF, so it's secure and safe. And absolutely protect your work with either registering with the Writers Guild or the US Copyright Office. Both make it pretty easy. Last I checked, I think the Writers Guild is $25. Huh? 20 bucks still? 20 bucks for 10 years, I believe it is. Yeah. And US Copyright was 35, I want to say. Oh, 60. See, it's been a minute. 65. It's still worth it though, because that's US Copyright Office. So highly recommend. Definitely do that before you submit to anything. Get protected. Do your due diligence on any contest or any fly-by-night. I've seen some shady competitions out there, and there's no real protection for the consumer against them. Anybody can create a contest. I can create a contest, take all your money, and be gone. In fact, no, side income. No, and I'll take your screenplay. So let's say you you place well in a contest, your book or your screenplay, and you play semis or quarterfinals, or lucky enough to get a big win, and you get meetings. There are generally two types of meetings that people are going to approach you with: a general or a pitch. And I had to learn the lesson the hard way. A general meeting is not to talk about your screenplay. A general meeting is to see if you and the agent or the executive can get along. They kind of feel each other out and see if this would be a cool person to work with. I always have the script ready to go, the pitch ready to go, in case they say, well, what are you working on? And then you launch into it. But it's generally to discuss you and what you're passionate about and what they're working on, and see if you're a good fit. They're fun. They're actually once you get over the nerves, you're like, oh, I'm meeting with an executive or an agent, it's nerve-wracking. But when you get to know them, you realize they're in your corner. They actually want you to win and succeed. Not only because they want you to win, but because they win too. So they're generally in your corner. And once I kind of realized that, it helped me calm down my nerves from meeting with these people. Now, the pitch meeting, that's a whole different thing. That one, you're going in there specifically to pitch your idea that they're interested in. And that's generally about 10 minutes long. They want to know a little bit about you. They want to know your characters, your story arc. Even sometimes I'll ask you who you see playing roles, just to kind of see where your head's at. It's all kind of a test. They don't really want your advice on who to cast, but they want to see who you think would be good in those roles. They may even ask you what you think the budget would be, which is a trap. Don't fall for it, because I said a number once and they kind of laughed me out of the room a little bit because I was so far off. I always just say I leave it to the experts. I mean, if it's small budget, I know it's small budget, I might say, yeah, it could be made for $1 million. But anything bigger, I'll say, oh yeah, that's a $25 million. They'll be like, yeah, right. So I would just kind of be general with that. Pitch meetings are great because a lot of times they'll ask you what else you got. They'll either ask for your script or your book to read it, or they may come in with what else do you have, and that's your opportunity to lay it on the line and tell them anything else you have in mind, even if it's not finished yet. Tell them what you got going on, because they want to hear about a writer who's got ideas. You're not a one-hit wonder. You are consistent, and they can make a lot of money off of you, and thereby giving you a lot of money. So definitely have ideas ready to go. I was at a panel once. I was in the audience, and it was showrunners and screenwriters and a couple executives. And someone brought up the factor when a showrunner talked about when they were looking to hire writers, the most important factor for them, what they call it the hang factor. It says, can I hang out with this person for 12 hours a day? And that was literally, he said 80% of his decision making, whether they were talented, no matter what level of talent they had, it was the hang factor. And all of them on the panel nodded in agreement. So the hang factor is super important, apparently, that, you know, you go in there and when you meet these people, be professional, be yourself, and just be relaxed and be cool and be someone they want to hang with. That was a big surprise. I thought, you know, talent, you know, they want somebody who's like the best screenwriter they've ever seen. No, it's the hang factor. So if you ever get a meeting, keep that in mind. Exactly. They don't want egos. They don't want difficult. They want someone who's going to hang out, have a good time, and create, be a powerhouse creator. So another thing is I saw on screenwriting Twitter, there's a whole section of Twitter that's all about screenwriting and screenwriters. And someone brought up a really interesting point, and in Twitter, if you're not on there, it has threads. So someone will do a post and then have a series of commentary afterwards. It's all one topic. And he brought up the headline of hard work, luck, and the actions of others. That's what our industry is, the actions of others. And if you think about it, it's completely true. Like what I've said today, networking, talking to people, you can, you know, work hard all you want, and you can have a little bit of luck to put yourself in the right place, right time. But it's the actions of others who are going to elevate your work. For my case, an indie publisher liked what I did. The rock band liked what I did. The actions of others pulled me up to where I couldn't pull myself up. You know, you can, as an individual, you can only do so much. But when that person on Twitter wrote the actions of others, that really resonated with me that it's true. The writing community, screenwriters, novels, it really is kind of a small community if you think about it. You know, there's thousands of writers, but it feels like the community feels small. And by connecting with people, you're connecting with other people, a lot more people, and the word gets out about you. And if, you know, let's say, oh, hey, Joe wrote this great drama, I can't use it, but Mr. Producer over here, that's something you're looking for. Talk to Joe. That kind of thing. That happens a lot. So that resonated with me. Hard work, luck, and the actions of others. That really just hit home for me. And for me personally, my personal mantra in all this, you know, I've been doing this seriously for give or take 20 years. And it's only been in the last 5 years that I've had serious traction. So my mantra that I say to myself anytime I'm getting ready for a project is hope and perseverance. Those two things have kept me going through everything. You know, as writers, we all have a story to tell. We've all been through a lot in our personal lives trying to do the writing. You know, we come up with unimaginable obstacles. I know everybody has stories about obstacles in your way, things that got in the way of your creativity, whether it's yourself or external circumstances. And so I say hope and perseverance. Keep the hope alive, and it will allow you to persevere through anything, and you will get there. So thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we're honored that he came today, of course, and shared such wonderful information. But hope and perseverance. Don't give up. Plus, he said, have some stuff. Even you may have thought you were going to throw it out. Keep some stuff in the ready. You know, keep some stuff ready because you never know. Somebody will say, "What else you got?" You know, and what else you got is certainly better than take time. And thank you for sharing such wonderful insights today. We have a little gift for you, and we do hope you drink a little.
I do.
And okay, well, a lot. We have two, and we like drinkers. But we thank you for coming, And we have something else, but we'll get to that. But we do like that you came today, and we have our book. It's just a short story book called Blood Fiction. And it's got some stories of science fiction and all kinds, but it's blood fiction. Now, let me hold it up. And there's quite a few of us that are in that book. So have short stories relating to blood. And coming up, that's a great thing. That's right. And believe me, we have trackers on every story. So if we see any of those elements ending up in other stories, we will know. No. And I don't care. They can. I'm Italian. We get it back anyway. Right. You know, bleed but read. And as we took the line, and if you don't have blood, you didn't come to play. You know, so which has anybody ever seen the TV series? Not the streaming series Warrior, the Warrior, about the origination of martial arts in America. What a phenomenal 2-season show. You'll stay up all night watching every one of them. And it's just outrageously written and carries a lot with it. But we're honored that you were here with us today. We'll have the book for you outside in a minute. And we thank you again for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Here's the book. We'll have some outside in just a minute that he'll sign, and we'll be happy to sell and get to you before we have some lunch. And we just have a couple of announcements that I didn't get. The book, $6. You can't ask better than that. 2 for $20. You can't ask more than that. Can you? We'll see how many of you can still add, huh? 1 drink and we got you. 2 and you're ours. But we'll do it, and we got you here, and we're thankful for it. Now, how is that voice for a reading voice? Good. No, I tried one time years ago, but I couldn't get the word coffee out of my system. So I was born in New York, and coffee I lost because of that word, coffee. So you got a great voice, but forget the coffee. So, but stick to water, right? So that's better than my grandmother, who transposed oys and Goyle was girl, and Boyle was Burl. So I used to grow up trying to figure out that was Brooklyn East, we called it. Or if you lived at 33rd and 3rd, you were at Choyd and Choyd Street. But we thank you again. We're so honored that you took the time to come down here. Thank you. Thank you again. Do you want to say something? Okay. Sure.
Due to a Facebook group on for screenwriters, I was reached out to by a producer. She was the actress on the original Street, her name is Gina Nemo. She reached out to me and said she's looking for a science fiction screenwriter. And this was back in 2021. So she hired me, my very first paid screenwriting gig, to write a science fiction television pilot. And it was called Finch and Skull. And it is currently being shopped around Hollywood. She's got clout, so she's going to a lot of meetings. She's trying to get the show made. But that opened the door. We worked so well together on it. She, this year, in February, hired me again to write a science fiction feature film for her. And she said, Brian, this is going to be tough because she already had the filming dates were in May. And they had the cast, they had the location, they had the director, they had the crew, they had everything lined up, but she and the director threw out the script that they had. So she says, okay, you've got like 3 months to create a new science fiction feature film that, oh, and by the way, there's no budget, so there's no special effects, and there's no choreographed fighting because I can't afford it. So write me something that's very suspenseful and sci-fi with that in mind. It's like, what? So I took it on myself and I said, this is really like the Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone, so much of the Twilight Zone was about dialogue. Dialogue created the tension. I said, I'm going to do the same thing with this. So the end of the day, I wrote this thing, and normally a script will go through about 20 revisions before it gets to a set. I had enough time for 3. And met with the director and the producer, Gina, and we sat down and we sort of hashed out the script and what changes could be made. And they said, we can't do this. Can you come to the set as script supervisor so you can make changes on the fly for us? And I said, yes, don't, twist my arm. Of course, being on the set is super educational. And I will say it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. It changed everything for me as a writer. I could see clearly how my words are filming of this movie. My 2 paragraphs description was like, yeah, that's not going to like scratch that for one thing. Like I didn't want to do, but I can see how it works in the industry. And dialogue changes and things, and working with the actors were happy to have me. Like, what about this? What are you thinking with this? And I did a lot of, I don't want to step on your artistry. You interpret it how you want the character to go. I didn't want to have an ego about it. I wanted them to take the character and make it their own. Anyway, long story short, the poster for the movie just got released. The film is going to be released in some way, shape, or form early 2023. But as a writer, one of our dreams is to see our name under written by on a screenplay, and the poster has my name on it, and it was one of the greatest. Well, thanks. It was just on the. Yes, the movie is called The Simeon Trials, and I have it posted on my socials. I will say that I bring it up only because I want you guys to believe that anybody can do it. I'm just a guy, and through all the things that we talked about today, you can do it. Anybody can do this, and there's no rocket science. It's just hope and perseverance. Yes. I would. Would I ever consider writing for live theater? And actually, being a playwright is something I would like to do. That, again, even though it's a screenplay, it writes lacking. And I've always been fascinated by musicals and plays. I love going to the theater. So if I had a story that I thought was good enough, I would totally do it. But I haven't come up with anything that I thought would work. So I refuse to do one until it would be a good one. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to add that one last thing in.